Hey everyone and welcome to another video, and today guys we're doing another episode of Pro Player Insight, this time around highlighting Dopa. Now I understand Dopa is not a pro player, but screw it, I love him so much and I really wanted to do a video specifically on Dopa, highlighting all the little details and intricacies that make him so bloody consistent. So what are we going to be looking for today specifically? Now today we're only going to be highlighting Dopa's Orianna. We're not going to be taking a look at his Twist of Fate or his Fizz or his Kassadin, only Orianna, because in my opinion it's extremely overlooked and it's always in the shadow of his Twist of Fate, even though I think it's his best champion. Now if we take a look at his OPGG on the right hand side here, Orianna is his most played champion with 96 games played with a 59% win ratio and an 8.1 CS per minute average. Now this is fascinating to me because if you think of Orianna's champion identity, you think of mid to late game scaling, you think of low CC, low gank setup, hard to roam, hard to invade, very slow, controlled champion. Now he is able to use Orianna in a way that I didn't think is possible and effectively climb with her no matter what he's versing in high elo Korean Challenger solo queue, which is just mind-boggling. So we're going to get into all the details. Now if you think about it, I would expect these sorts of stats with a champion like Zoe, or Akali, or Galio, or Lissandra, or Syndra, something with much more proactivity, or even Twisted Fate, but just not Orianna. So we're going to get into all the details, we're going to look at his runes, his itemization, the theory behind it, and why it works, or how he's able to make it work. We're going to break down his TP usage, which is something I still learn a lot from, still to this day, even though I've watched probably hundreds or even maybe thousands of his VODs. We're going to be breaking down his spell swaps, ward timings and his locations, and more importantly guys, and I get this question a lot, mid-game farming and grouping. How does he know when to group? How does he know when to farm? Especially in these very fast-paced Korean Challenger matches. And we're also going to be doing this through the lens of two Orianna games. The first one's going to be Orianna versus Irelia, which is a very tricky matchup. And the second one is Orianna versus Galio, which again is a very tricky matchup, and in that second game he actually has losing side lanes, which actually was a fascinating VOD to look at. Now over the past few days of watching a lot of Dopa Orianna VODs, I've been asking myself the same question over and over. What is Dopa doing specifically that allows him to be so incredibly consistent with a scaling control mage like Orianna, no matter the mid jungle 2v2, no matter the mid matchup 1v1, no matter the game pace, no matter the composition he is versing? And what I've realized is that it's not all to do with his gameplay. It's largely to do with his ability to adapt his runes and itemization every single game. So the main piece of learning that I want you guys to take away from this entire video is the importance of adaptation and adapting to your environment. Given your mid matchup 1v1, given the mid jungle 2v2, given the composition you're versing, given the champions that are on your champion, given the elo range that you're within, you should be adapting your runes and your itemization and the way you play the lane to increase your chances of creating favorable situations within the game. Now we really need to try and understand the reasoning behind these rune choices and itemization choices from Dopa, because if we don't, when it gets to the laning phase, we're not really going to understand the context behind why he's trading the way he is, or the way he actually plays out the laning phases. So let's actually start with the phase rush page. Now he goes these two pages. More recently he's been going for the phase rush page, but traditionally over the past 2 weeks he's been going a lot more of the unsealed spellbook page. Now phase rush in my opinion is the best Orianna setup because it's so incredibly versatile and flexible. It can be used for aggressive short trades, and it can be used for it's great for skirmishing, and it's great for team fighting, and it has very good scaling. But he does go for a very early aggressive setup. He goes for Scorch over Gathering Storm. He goes for Biscuits and Time Warp Tonic, which suggests a much faster game pace instead of Magical Footwear. And he also goes for an attack speed shard, which is very common for a lot of mages right now because it gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more control over the wave, because you don't necessarily need to rely on your your mana and your abilities for thinning the wave. You can just thin it with your auto attacks, which allows you to conserve your mana and use your abilities more aggressively onto the enemy. Now, what's interesting is that he doesn't go Magical Footwear, which is a common choice with Orianna, because Orianna really wants to conserve that early gold and put it towards her lost chapter, or even just other items in general, which suggests that he's either going for early tier 1 boots for extra movement speed in trading, or he just puts such a massive emphasis on having this early lane strength with biscuits and time warp tonic, is that he's just willing to make that sacrifice. Now, generally, you want to be going phase rush into matchups where you don't really need cleanse, or you don't need access to things like exhaust and things like that. Because traditionally, Unsealed Spellbook was the setup you would go when you want access to cleanse, you want access to exhaust, you want access to barrier. Because in a lot of these matchups, and especially in high elo, you can't afford to skip TP. You need TP, because if you don't take TP, the enemy's just going to get tempo bases onto you. They're going to be able to create roam opportunities. Then it gets very, very messy. So one of the main strengths and one of the main reasons I go this Unsealed Spellbook page on Orianna, I go it in matchups when I'm versing, say, a Lysandra or a Twisted Fate, or something where I get a lot of value from a second summoner like Cleanse or Exhaust, because I still want TP. I still want to use TP for that initial first base, but then I want to swap to the Exhaust or swap to the Cleanse at around 6 minutes 30 when the Unsealed Spellbook becomes available. But again, another main strength of Unsealed Spellbook is that it scales incredibly well, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in skirmishes, and just overall adapting to whatever happens in the game. Do you want to play more aggressively and go Ignite or Ghost or something like that? Or do you want to play more defensively? You want more access to Barrier or Exhaust or Cleanse or Heal? It really just depends. It allows you to adapt to that specific game pace, which ties in directly with what I believe to be the way Dopa interprets Orianna's identity to be a very, I guess, like a chameleon. You're just adapting to your environment. You're just trying to neutralize the enemy lane and scale into mid-game. So he goes for the standard Unsealed Spellbook, Magical Footwear, Biscuits, Time Warp, which again suggests a very fast-paced style of playing Orianna. And again, he goes for a very aggressive secondary tree. He goes for Scorch and Mana Flow Band. Mana Flow for extra mana in the early laning phase, which is very handy for aggressive trading. And again, Scorch for proccing that Scorch often. And Orianna is a champion that can proc Scorch often because of her low cooldown with a Q and the reliability of actually hitting the Q in the first place. And the reason I actually circled this armor here is that in a lot of difficult matchups, he will actually go double armor, which I've never really seen before in any mid-mage. And in some matchups, he even went MR and armor, which was very strange to me. But majority of the time, he was going attack speed and a adaptive force and armor or MR here. So these are the two pages he goes. I can't really tell you how he decides between the two of them, but for me personally, playing a lot of Orianna and studying a lot about runes, generally, TLDR, Unsealed Spellbook, when you want more access to things like Cleanse, Exhaust, Barrier, etc., and Phase Rush, when you don't really need access to any of those summoners, you just want to scale into mid-game, and you want access to the full tree and that movement speed, utility into mid-game, just more team-fight-oriented games. So let's go into the itemization here, guys. As you can see here with this image, Dopa is a very flexible gamer, and the way he actually plays Orianna is this very flexible approach. This is a bit of a meme, but I thought it was very fitting. Anyway, let's begin with the starting items, guys. So the starting items, these are just a few screenshots of his recent games, where he goes starting every single time with his crafting pot because he's going time warp tonic. And look at this, nearly every single game, basically is every single game, he's going back for a Dark Seal Dorans, or just a Dorans, then a Dark Seal, or then a Dark Seal tier 1 boots and a Dorans. He's always going Dark Seal and Dorans. Now, I was trying to figure this out, and it will make sense when we get into the gameplay. He goes Dark Seal and Dorans, and he goes for this Biscuits, he goes for this Time Warp Tonic and all that sort of thing, because he wants the ability to adapt to the game base. If the game is going to get played really fast, he wants that early strength, that early durability, that early access to resources to be able to isolate the lane, or to be able to prevent the enemy from roaming, or if an early skirmish breaks out, he's actually not that weak. So yes, this does severely limit or severely delay your lost chapter spike, but he doesn't care about that because he knows that in Korean solo queue, the game, or the first 6 minutes of the game, or first 6 to 8 minutes, are so incredibly important, and pressure is very important, or at least solid trading is very important, that he puts an emphasis on that, okay? Which is very, very interesting. I'd never really done that with Orianna before, and this is something that I need to potentially experiment with. But anyway, he goes for the very stock standard... Oh, actually, sorry, before I go on any further here, this synergizes very well with Unsealed Spellbook, specifically because you want to be basing early to use your TP, get those early items, then have your TP on cooldown, so when it does get to around 6 minutes or 7 minutes or whenever it is, you can actually swap that TP into something else, whether it's an exhaust, whether it's a heal, whether it's a ghost barrier, whatever you need. So it's a very common strategy, specifically with Unsealed Spellbook, because you want access to be able to swap that TP out for something else as soon as possible. So that's actually why, as well, this strategy synergizes very well with Unsealed Spellbook. Anyway, he goes for the very burst-oriented Orianna approach. So he goes Ludens every single time. He goes Morellos. He puts a big emphasis on Sork Treads. And again, this says to me that he doesn't want to be playing Orianna in that scaling, sustained damage way. The way he views Orianna is very burst-oriented, 100 to 0, I guess somewhat aggressive Orianna build that doesn't necessarily scale as well, but has a lot of initial burst teamfight threats. So, was very interesting. So he's actually got no Archangels. He never goes Tabis as well, even when he needs armor. He'll always put an emphasis on going Sorks. He will go Mercs if need be when he's versing very heavy CC, but he does put a massive emphasis on Sorks. And if you've watched my itemization video, flat penetration in general is very, very solid, and it synergizes very well with Oblivion Orb, and especially if you're getting it relatively early in the game, in which he does. In terms of Sork Boots, he does get them quite early. If he's versing a lot of armor, a lot of AD, sorry, he will go in early Seekers. He won't finish the Seekers, though. He won't turn it into a Zhonya's. He'll actually just go Seekers into Lost Chapter, then finish his Ludens. And if he's versing a lot of MR, a lot of magic damage, sorry, he will go after his Ludens, he will go into a Banshees, but always get the Fiendish Codex first, which makes a lot of sense because Orianna can really utilize that CDR. So it's pretty stock standard stuff here, nothing out of the ordinary, and again, it all ties into that identity. It all ties into that very fast-paced, flexible, adaptable way of playing Orianna, no matter what opponent you're versing. Because if you were to go that scaling Archangels approach, or scaling Lost Chapter approach, or starting Dorans and trying to minimize, then most likely the game is going to be out of your hands so fast, and you're not going to be able to scale into mid-game, and the enemy's going to have way too much room to do things. So let's remember a few things here, guys. We're not here to directly copy Dopa, because what works in Challenger in Korea may not work in your given elo or server. And as we can look at this image here, this could be us. So we're just going to blindly follow Dopa right now. We're just going to be shooting ourselves in the foot. We're going to be actually tarnishing ourselves, or actually decreasing our chances of winning. And it ties into my main point before, is that I just want you guys to understand and gain a little bit of inspiration from Dopa in terms of adapting. Understanding what game pace do you play within? What elo do you play within? What do you need more of? What do you need less of? Do you need a little bit more lane strength? Do you need a little bit more scaling? Do you need to be that sustained damage Orianna? Or do you want to be that burst threat when you're versing a lot of squishy targets? And remember, we've got to keep in mind that in Korea, most games end around 20 minutes anyway. So if you actually look at Dopa's OPGG, there's like 22 minute win, 20-minute win, 18-minute win. It's just very, very fast-paced games. We are here to understand the mindset and reasoning behind his decision making, so we can take things away to implement in our own games. So let's go ahead and dive into the gameplay, guys. So for the first VOD today, guys, we're going to be going over Dopa's Orianna versus a Challenger Irelia. Now, traditionally, this is a very tricky matchup for Orianna, and especially because Irelia has actually opted in for PTA, so a lot of early aggression coming out of that rune, alongside a combat spell with Ignite. Contrast that with the TP from Orianna, which gives basically no early lane strength, as well as the scaling rune through Unsealed Spellbook. So it'll be very interesting to see how Dopa manages this lane. Now, a few things I want you guys to look for. I want you guys to look for the way Dopa manages the wave, the way he thins the wave, how he uses his vision, how heavy he actually trades, and also, the most important thing, how he utilizes his TP advantage within this laning phase. Very, very important. And we're going to make sure we go into all the details, and keep in mind, guys, that he's actually opted in for that very early aggressive rune setup with Time Warp Tonic, Corrupting Pot, Scorch, and Mana Flow Band, and he's also complemented that with a Corrupting Pot start as well. And a few little details, just one last detail. He actually used one Corrupting Pot level 1 to punish an invade from this Jace. Yes, he gets an assist, but this does hurt Orianna a lot because she really needs access to all 3 of those Corrupting Pots. And one Corrupting Pot advantage is actually very big within the early laning phase. Now, this is a very difficult game for Orianna as well because she's versing Poke with AD, all-in threat from Irelia, and a lot of gap closing potential for McGregor. So there's actually a lot of threat on the top side of the map onto this Orianna, and also CC, heavy CC coming out of the bot lane through Morgana and Ashe. So it's a very tricky game for Orianna, a lot of threats to deal with. So let's actually see how Dopa manages this game. So generally when Orianna is facing an assassin, one of three things can happen in the early laning phase. Number one, the assassin actually hard pushes the first 1 or 2 waves, tries to bounce the wave at around level 3, level 4 to create all-in threat down the long lane for the assassin. So that's a very common strategy. You see it a lot with Irelia, with Echo, things like that. Conversely, option number 2 is when the assassin just plays very, very slow. Only last hits, doesn't really want to push or get pushed in, and they just kind of want to minimize early levels. That's actually quite good for Orianna, and that's, you know, if that sort of thing happens, Orianna would be very happy with it. Or option number 3 is where the Irelia actually lets, or the assassin actually lets the Orianna push level 1 by either standing in the middle of the creeps, forcing Orianna to Q her, or even just not autoing the creeps at all and waiting for Orianna to Q auto the minions, in which the minions will actually slow build towards the assassin, in which the assassin can either hold the wave on their side and look for an all-in, or either just straight let it crash and then play off the bounce wave for an all-in, and then look for an aggressive trade into getting the wave into resetting. That sort of in for like some form of tempo base. So they're the 3 options. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how Dopa navigates this early laning phase, yeah. Now, as you can see, you'll see in this lane, Dopa utilizes his auto attacks a hell of a lot. And especially when he's behind his range creeps. If you auto the enemy when you're behind your range creeps like this, it's very easy to de-aggro the minions just by walking a little bit back, and then these minions will actually re-aggro back onto your caster creeps. So it's a very good way to get a bit of trade damage. Very nice to get a bit of trade damage onto the assassin. So he's always abusing his range advantage. He's always weaving in those auto attacks. And this is, again, one of the benefits of going the attack speed shard. Not just for thinning the wave like this, but for also weaving in those auto attacks onto the assassin here. So the wave's in a very good spot right now for Dopa. Generally in these sorts of situations, you'll see the control mage try to thin it. So the Irelia doesn't instantaneously crash it. And the control mage will try and keep it here as long as possible. So Dopa's here trying to thin it with auto attacks, manage it a little bit. Beautiful. Proccing that Scorch as much as he can. Getting those mana flow. Proccing that mana flow as well. Off cooldown. Really, you see how many auto attacks he's weaving in here. Really, really nice stuff. And also what the attack speed chart allows you to do is actually CS a lot easier under tower. Dopa never misses easy to hit CS. He always gets those easy to hit CS. Now, very crucial point here, guys. 2 minutes 30, and what do we know? If you watch my jungle tracking video, or my warding fundamentals video, or any of my videos, you generally want to be starting to ward the river at around 2 minutes 30. I say this every single time, and this is because junglers start to become active in the river or look for level 3 ganks around 2 minutes 40. So it's a great opportunity now to get the ward out as the wave's kind of crashing here or about to crash. So Dopa leans onto top side, knowing that Gragas started bot side. Gragas is no way going to be doing a vertical clear here. So Gragas is probably going to be doing a standard bot to top clear, whether it's 3 camp, 4 camp, and then maybe looking to go into river, potentially even looking for an early gank, that sort of thing. And this is especially helpful knowing that he most likely is going to be getting shoved in the entire game by Irelia. Or this ward could be great as a precautionary ward, thinking that the wave actually was technically bouncing back out to Irelia, in which this would give him a little bit of wiggle room to lean onto one side so he could, you know, safely navigate the lane. So it's a very standard ward there, and the reason he warded here and not up here is because he needed to get back in lane in time, not to miss this creep here that's dying. He needs to make sure he's not missing any XP. So really it looks like she's trying to thin the wave here, which is strange. Generally the Irelia in this position would kind of let it push out a little bit more. Bit of a mistake here from Irelia, I think. But Dopa's really punishing that, getting a lot of auto attacks in, abusing his range advantage, thinning the wave and pulling the wave again. Look at this beautiful spot that Dopa's got the wave in, just holding it here in this nice little pocket. And again, he's thinning the wave. Notice how he's thinning the wave. He knows that this is a cannon. So this acts as a lot of melee or range creep. So he's trying to thin the wave as much as he can so he can maintain the wave here as long as possible. Because if he doesn't touch this wave at all, then it's just Irelia's just going to be easily able to push it in. And notice here, guys, look at these auto attacks that Dopa's getting onto the Irelia. 3. He got nearly 4 auto attacks onto this Irelia, and he's trying to make Irelia make a choice between fighting him or go for the wave. And if he goes for him, he's fighting under the creeps, or he's going to be very, very close to the tower. And if Dopa was just to play for the wave and wasn't going to be using any of these auto attacks on Irelia, then Irelia probably would have been able to just get this wave out for free. So Dopa's knowingly, willingly understanding that he knows that Irelia is very desperate to try and get the wave out, or the wave into the tower. So Dopa's trying to dissuade him or whatever from getting the wave in. So he's making his life very hard. He's even walking past the creeps here to get that damage in. And he's using a lot of his mana pool. Notice that. It's already 3 minutes 20. He's got no more corrupting pot stacks. He's only got 650 gold. And he already is basically He only has 1 biscuit left. So he's playing this lane very, very fast. And note, what's fascinating is that he didn't necessarily have to play the lane this fast. He's only played the lane this fast because he wants to prevent Irelia having full control over the wave. And if he wasn't able to trade like this on Irelia, then Irelia would probably have a lot more kill threat on him early. Yes, that forces Orianna to go back to base early, go for an early Dark Seal or whatever. But he's willing to do that and adapt to the game base or his matchup, knowing that he's in Korean Challenger and he can't afford to let Irelia have full river control or full lane control. He knows he needs to protect himself at all times by using his offense as his defense. And yes, he's going to delay his Lost Chapter spike by a lot, but that's just the cost. That's just the price he's willing to pay. And note, guys, one thing I've watched as well when I've seen a lot of Dopa's gameplay, because he's so good at doing this sort of thing and really punishing the laner and keeping the wave on this side of the lane while keeping his wards out and trading very well, and basically dissuades any jungle from wanting to look mid, because you pan your camera mid as a jungler and you see this, you see the wave here, you see the Irelia, your teammate low HP, and he's even got topside warded. There's basically no chance of getting a gank onto Orianna like this. So really great stuff from Dopa so far. And this is all because he's been thinning the wave so well with auto attacks, weaving in auto attacks onto the Irelia, not afraid to use all his mana. But he's not getting himself in kill threat range. He's still respecting Irelia's kill threat range with Ignite. He's taking short trades. He's not just constantly trading. He's abusing his range advantage, tethering very, very well here. So now you can probably safely assume that Irelia is recalling right now. And now this is what's fascinating with the way Dopa uses TP. So Dopa has TP right now. We've got to remember that. Irelia, this wave is actually slow building out to Irelia. So this is actually a decent recall timing for Irelia. It's on a cannon wave. Dopa's has no mana. So it's going to be very difficult for Orianna to get this wave out in time before Irelia actually comes back to lane. So it's going to be quite a bit of a sticky situation. So look what Dopa actually does. He just last hits. He just chills. And what is this actually going to do? This is actually going to allow him to maximize the amount of gold he's going to have, but also limit the amount of minions that Irelia is going to have when she gets back. Because if he was to hard shove this as much as he could, auto attack, Q, whatever, not only is it going to be risky because the wave could literally just be stuck out here, it's actually not as good because in the process of hitting the enemy minions, you're actually saving the HP or conserving the HP of your minions, which means that when Irelia gets back, these are all going to be high HP. But if he just sits here and last hits, he's actually, notice how his minions are dying? And yes, it is very slowly pushing out to Irelia, but he doesn't care because he's just still denying a lot of CS to this Irelia. So then he just starts his recall now with 930 gold, goes back for a early TP's back, goes back for an early Dark Seal and a Doran's and a Pink Ward, and comes back. Now, because he has early strength within these items, Doran's and a Dark Seal, he's able to establish a bit of control and get this wave out. Nice, beautiful trade there, weaving in, dodging that stun, getting a lot of auto attacks off. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's flash for flash. 2 flashes. So he's in a pretty decent spot here. Irelia's quite low. He's still got to be a bit careful though, because as soon as Irelia actually hits 6, he has a lot of all-in threat onto this Orianna, especially since Ori has no sums now. You probably safely assume that Gragas is going to be basing going back onto bot side. But now he's got his support hovering him right now, so he's not scared at all. And then here, beautiful, baits the Irelia in into a free kill. Beautiful stuff here by Dopa. Making sure, and notice how that's like the first time he actually got basically hit by the stun, is when his support was there and he was actually just baiting it. So it's really nice stuff. Beautiful. Irelia rage quits for a little bit, or DCs, I don't know. So he puts his pink down. Bit of a weird pink location. I don't know if I agree with that. But he goes back, and he didn't have much gold, so he only buys another pink, and he buys an Amplifying Tomb. Wave's going to be slow building out to him, so it's not too bad. He hasn't really... Okay, so we just swapped to heal there. So he actually swapped out his TP for heal. You definitely don't want to be swapping out your flash. You always want to be swapping out your TP because you want access to your flash as soon as it's up. And he also went heal, I'm assuming, because Irelia used Ignite and doesn't have Ignite for a while. And if the enemy doesn't have Ignite, heal's always better because it's AoE comparatively to Barrier, and you get movement speed as well. So more utility. So it would be very interesting to see how, now as you can see, I guess, Dopa's gotten this lead through superior wave management, understanding that he had to adapt to this specific game pace, and really understanding how to weave in those auto attacks and abuse his range advantage. So first thing he does when he comes into lane, generally want to be either getting down vision or clearing the enemy's vision, so he clears a nice little pink here. I'm confused as to why he doesn't have a trinket. Unfortunate. To be honest, I probably would have swapped my pink onto that side, but whatever. Not a good trade here by Dopa. Gets hit by the stun. Okay, that's what he does here. Wave's at a good spot, so he's extending the wave. Abusing his range advantage, trying to thin the wave again with auto attacks without attack speeds really coming into play. Notice how he's respecting a lot here, though. He is respecting a lot because he knows that Irelia does have a lot of kill threat at the moment with his level 6 spike. Let's get drag. Alright, so it looks like it's going to slow build out to Irelia. Yeah, let's see what he actually does. Rift Herald's the next objective. He's slowing it down a little bit here. He actually has no corrupting pots left because he had to use them from that bad trade. So he's slow building out a little bit here. Trying to get that wave out. And notice how he's using this as an opportunity. He knows that the wave's so far away, so it's very difficult for Irelia to hold this. She's going to hold it anyway. Nah. Why would she do that? Maybe she needs to recall as well? I don't know. Bit of a weird decision from Irelia there, to be honest. She should have held that. So he chooses not to recall because he saw Irelia just shove and stay in the lane. I'm assuming. Or maybe he saw his Thresh roam up, so maybe... Okay. Is he going to hold this or thin it? What is he going to do? Okay, he actually... Because he needs to recall. He can't afford to freeze right now. Looks like everyone's setting up for a Rift Herald. The support's roaming. A lot of actions happening top side. His top side's actually winning. So he's playing towards his strong side. How much gold does he have? He has a lot of gold. Okay, so he chooses to shove that and recall. I actually like that, because if he had frozen... Someone could have probably come and unfrozen it. I don't think it would have stayed frozen. And he probably wanted to maximize the amount of gold he wanted on this recall. So what does he actually get here? So he wanted his Lost Chapter and... Ruby Crystal. Interesting. Now, this was the game where Dopa actually went double armor in his runes. Maybe he's going Ruby Crystal here because he wanted a bit of extra durability to survive the all-in or burst from the enemy team, given that he already has armor from his runes. Maybe he's done that. for that reason. I'm actually not too sure. I've never seen him actually do that in any other game. This is a bit of a random thing. Wonder what he's going to turn that into. What do you turn that into? Oh, he's going to turn that into a Oblivion Orb later. So Ping's missing here. Fast forwarding a bit. Irelia's got a bit of a roam opportunity now, so looks like a play is happening. So he instantly starts roaming bot, knowing that it looks like that's where the play is going to happen. And Dopa doesn't compensate at all. He knows that the play's over. It's a bad play to go to. He knows that this is not his domain as Orianna. He doesn't try to do for some weird scrappy play. He just goes straight back to mid lane here. He's not wasting any time. Turned back a little bit there, but he clears the pink ward again. And that's the result of Irelia actually having the tempo, because she actually shoved in and tempo reset. And created a roam opportunity, even though it cost her CS. That's sometimes what you got to do as an assassin when you're behind. It looks like Gragas is trying to help her shove. And he catches his CS under tower. What's going on here? Not much is happening. Clears a ward. Helps get the scuttle. Goes back mid. Oh no. What happens here? It goes back mid. Be interesting to see where he uses his pink ward and his trinket. Right now, again, Rift Herald is extreme priority, so I'm assuming he'll definitely put his pink ward on top side somewhere. No reason for him to put on bot side, especially since Dragon's gone. There it is. There's the pink. Trying to shove and prep for this, because knowing that his team's going to be doing Rift Herald, there's no need to slow build or anything. You just want to shove and help your team as much as possible, because you're Orianna. You don't want to get to the fight late. You want to get to you want to be at the fight and play the front to back fight. So notice how Orianna, she's not sitting mid trying to poke Irelia or anything. She's trying to group with the team right now, knowing this looks like a pretty standard front to back, could be a potential front to back team fight. This is a big mistake I see a lot of Oriannas do, is that like, oh yeah, my team's doing the Rift, it's fine. If the enemy come, then I can come. But if you do that, you miss out on a lot of, like, one of your biggest advantages of your champion, one of the biggest strengths, sorry, is your ability to put your ball out and create zone control. So if you were to put your ball out over here, then these enemies have to like either navigate here, or they're like, it's so hard for them to come into this choke point. So the strength of Orianna is that you can actually deny the enemy from even getting into a position to potentially contest. But if you're not here, and then you let the enemy come, and maybe they actually force your enemy back here, that can give them complete river access. Then it can be a lot harder to choke them out, because this is a much larger choke point. So, and as well, if the fight breaks out, you don't want to be coming to the fight late, because then you have no self-peel. You want to be sitting behind your front line, or at least with your team playing for burst. And given the way Dopa actually interprets Orianna's identity, given this he goes for a very burst-oriented build, you see this a lot with Dopa, is that he groups a lot. He doesn't sit in the side lane. He doesn't want to come to fight late. He always wants to be at the fight as it's starting, because he wants to play for burst. So he's trying to control those choke points there with his Q. And then he realizes they're probably not going to contest. Let's see if he actually walks up for his Q. You see, he's trying to walk up with his Q. See that choke point? He's trying to make it hard for them to walk in. And that's the beauty of Orianna. Getting to fights first. Understanding the strength of your champion. So he actually uses his heal here to make sure he has TP. Which he has access to TP. Very nice. Oh. Play your front to back team fight. Here we go. Beautiful ult by Dopa. Getting him out of the ult. He had to flash though. Playing back. Protecting himself at all times. Front to back. Abusing his range advantage. Peeling his team. Pretty good fight for his team there. Goes back mid. I'm assuming he has a lot of gold. He has 1400. Nearly Ludens. Gets that wave. And now he's probably staying to get enough gold for Ludens. So I'm assuming he stays for a plate here. Yeah, stays for a plate. Beautiful. And he actually gets punished. Oh, he has a blue barrier. Holy shit. Nearly kills him. Alright, he gets punished for that. But that actually does give him enough gold for the Ludens, I believe. Or am I an idiot? What happens here? So it looks like the enemy actually get dragon off the back end of this. So what happens next? So ideally as Orianna, you want to be sitting in mid lane as long as possible. Yeah, so he gets gold off Ludens. That's why he actually overstayed for that plate there. So it's a bit of a greedy play. He does get punished, but he really wanted his Ludens because 1900 gold, given that you already had Lost Chapter. So he conserves his TP here. He knows that he doesn't necessarily have to use TP. Enemy has 2 dragons. He wants to stay in mid lane as long as possible. He wants to ideally avoid the side lane. He's just chilling. Notice how he didn't just QW the wave? I love that. This is a little small detail, but it does matter a lot. And this is something I'm working on, is every single wave, you need to be conscious, like, what are you doing? Where is your team, and what are you allowed to do? What's in your boundaries? Now, he only uses Q for the range creep set, for the melee creep set. He didn't actually just initially QW through the entire wave, because he knows that if he QWs through this entire wave, he's not going to have enough damage just to one-shot this cannon. And he doesn't have enough control in terms of his team's location to actually prevent Irelia from holding the wave temporarily on this side. Yes, it's 14 minutes, and he knows that is unlikely, but he just wants to maximize the amount of farm he has access to. And if the wave's in the middle or slightly on his side, he can just, safely farm from a distance without being too far away from his tower. And he knows his top laner, his jungle just made a play, so he's looking to go back to his jungle. And on top of that, he knows he has no flash. So he had to use flash in that previous skirmish, which is is very, very big for Orianna, and it's extremely important that you're conscious of when you do and don't have flash as Orianna. And it's probably one of the biggest reasons why a player like Dopa is able to get away with going something like Spellbook and not having that phase rush utility, is because he's extremely aware of the key threats, where or how he needs to fight in these games, like getting to fights early, that sort of thing, as well as never putting himself in a position where he has to be potentially in a position to use flash. He's very conscious of when he does and doesn't have flash. He actively changes the way he plays his lanes out. Just chilling here. Last hitting from a distance. Looks like Jinx is chilling in the bot lane, so it'll be very interesting to see what they do. Their team does have Rift right now, so they'll probably be looking for a Rift play soon. Just farming, not too much happening. Nice hook. Nice. Nice play. Oh my goodness. Good dodge by Dopa. Oh! He's out. Beautiful footwork. Now he TP's mid. Probably to get that spellbook off cooldown, swap that to something else soon. Alright, so it looks like they're doing a 5-man mid now. He knows that they need to be breaking this mid tier 1. So this is exactly what Orianna wants. Orianna wants his grouped fights. Beautiful. Yes, Irelia is shoving the side lane, but Orianna knows that, okay, it's better for me to be here temporarily to secure this tower. And if a fight breaks out, I'm going to be here. Abusing that range advantage. Beautiful. Alright, now, look at this. Orianna now understands that there's no need for him to be mid anymore. There's no more objectives. The tower's gone. The support's dead. Reset. Now go back to the side lane. And he doesn't go through here because he knows he still doesn't have flash. Irelia can pick him in this transition here, in his rotation. So he's just chilling, goes an extremely safe way, even checks bushes with his ball, and then goes to the side lane here. Catches his farm, checking if Irelia's doing the Krugs. You can probably see that they're gone. And then there's VOD. And this VOD actually bugs out. I can't go any further into this VOD. So what we're going to do now, hopefully the first VOD was very good at showing, I guess, the fundamentals of laning, how he abuses his range advantage, how he kind of ideally wants to hold the waves in the early game and also push the pace of the game with Orianna, given this he goes back for early Darkseal, Dorans, and what that actually looks like. This next game, I want to have more of an emphasis on the mid game and really talk about when he groups and when he, you know, how does he know when to farm, balance farming with grouping. So this was a very good introductory VOD, and the next one we're going to really go that next level deeper. So stay tuned, guys. Very, very important stuff we still need to cover. So for this VOD, guys, I'm still going to go over the early game, but in less detail, just kind of skim over it, go over the few key fundamentals, but largely I wanted to go over this VOD to show what Dopa does from behind in a game where he has losing lanes, and more importantly, emphasize what he does more in the mid game in terms of side laning, knowing when to group, and really keeping up those CS numbers. So fast forwarding a little bit here, getting straight into the meat of it. This is a very tricky matchup in terms of just raw kill threat, but he does go for that unsealed spellbook setup and swaps the cleanse as soon as possible. Same thing though, he's constantly trying to weave in auto attacks whenever possible. He tries to avoid auto attacking when he's in the middle of the crisp, because then you just take way too much damage. But you'll still see him weave in as many as possible as soon as Galio kind of gets in range. But more importantly, just keeping that Scorch procced off cooldown, keeping that Mana Flow procced off cooldown. Really trying to, not afraid to really push the pace of this lane. And notice how he actually dodges forward when Galio actually Qs. He always alternates his dodging patterns. Not afraid to go for early QWs as well. That's something that I'm really against. I very rarely do QWs because I like to play it much slower. Like, he's already, every single combo here, he's largely just doing QWs, which is just not the way I like to play Orianna. But he understands that in order to kind of prevent this Galio from doing things on the map. Look at that, it's crazy. He's getting a lot of damage off though, but he's really chugging through his pots. Like, it's 2 minutes 30, and he's already chugging his second corrupting pot. Does get a sneaky ward on top side here. It is a bit of a lazy ward, but not a big fan of that, but he probably understands that he needs to just really keep this Galio down. And as you can see here, he's playing this lane in a way that not many Oriannas do. And it's the same concept for champions like Victor, and some other scaling control mages like Azir. You can play it like this. It is a style, but if you mess up with this style, then you get really, really far behind. So now Dopa's used all 3 corrupting pots, really getting the hurt onto this Galio. This Galio's actually used 2 health pots as well. Weaving in those auto attacks as much as possible. And I think a thing for another thing we need to keep in mind here, he's probably thinking, if I can force Galio's TP mid, then that's a massive win, because if Galio uses TP mid, then he's not going to be able to use that TP for side lane plays. So maybe that's something I haven't really thought about, but that would be a massive benefit of playing the lane like this, because maybe you force Galio to TP back mid so he doesn't lose CS or doesn't let Orianna get too much control, and then yeah, you've just completely nullified his TP, which is a massive part of Galio's identity as a champion, those side lane TPs. So it looks like Galio is going for an early TP. No. Now Dopa is sitting on around 520 gold here. Galio gets the wave in. He goes back for an early Darkseal and a pink ward, I believe. Or what does he go for? Dorans. Oh, he goes for a Dorans. Okay, so he goes for Dorans over Darkseal potentially here for that added durability. Because Galio is a very burst-oriented champion. Looks like a bot play is happening. Now he just holds the wave. Extending the wave and holding the wave. So it looks like Galio's tipping bot. Oh, man. So his bot's now 0-3. His Renekton TP died as well. Galio TP gets a kill. Double Dorans. Very, very strong for Galio right now. So Orianna now uses this as an opportunity to get some wards out, knowing that the wave's going to be slow building towards her, and just denying Galio a bunch of CS right now. So as you can see, this game state is pretty suboptimal for Orianna. Galio's getting early TP kills off, still has flash, doesn't even have to use it. Orianna has had to use TP relatively early in the lane, wasn't even able to get Darkseal and Dorans, only Dorans. So not looking too great for Orianna right now. And note, Dopa didn't use the pink ward knowing that he wouldn't be able to defend it. He only used the vision trinket. Okay, very important distinction to make there as well. Trying to harass. He tried to block that one as well. And this is exactly the trading pattern that you want to be trying to do on champions like Galio. You poke, they get frustrated, use abilities either out or in, and then you poke them on the back end because they have high cooldowns. They can't just randomly turn around and kill you, you know? So you want to abuse your low cooldowns by constantly harassing. So he's trying to deny Galio some CS here by insta-shoving. I wonder if Dopa goes for another base here. For a Dark Seal. Look at plays happening top side here. So he's going to attend it. This is very bad for Orianna. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, shit. And Blowed Flash. Inefficient base. Into blown flash, into not getting anything, into death. That's like worst case scenario for Orianna. So as you can see right now, this is looking like an absolute shit show. Terrible for Orianna. She even goes back to base with only 650 gold. I'm assuming she goes back for another Dark Seal. A Dark Seal, sorry. Oh, man. Yeah, Dark Seal and a pink ward again. And I'm assuming he's only warding these side brushes here because he can't necessarily defend the dot bushes right now. He doesn't have enough priority to defend the dot bushes, so he's like, screw it, I'm just going to put this in the side here. Maybe sneak it in because people won't know it's there. And it's easier to kind of poke people off of it. So, as you can see, the game is getting played very fast, but he doesn't bitch out. He doesn't just go for an amplifying tomb. He still goes for that Dark Seal. He's still trying to match some of that pressure in the early game. Now, that whole play before, by the way, that's the definition of compensation. You see something happen, and you don't want to go to it because he really needed to recall, but he decided to go for it thinking that a skirmish may break out, so he wanted to be there. And that's where that skirmish awareness or game sense really comes into play in terms of likelihood of that skirmish being extended. So he thought that, okay, that was going to be extended for quite a while, in which Volibear might come, in which I could maybe sway Volibear from killing my Renekton and that sort of thing. So he made the call and he got punished for it. And that's something that he needs to go and review, and I would go into review and be like, and it's actually one of my biggest learning objectives, is looking at those situations where I did compensate and ask myself, why did I stay for this play? Why did I think I needed to be here? How can I know next time if I'm in a similar situation, what variables did I consider or didn't I consider that made me incorrectly judge this situation in a way? Anyway, still going on through this early game. Kindred's quite ahead though, still, I think. Well, not ahead, but relatively strong. So he's pushing, trying to back up his team. And note, guys, he could have slow built there. He could have actually chilled, relaxed last hit. But he knows his Kindred's going for an aggressive invade, so he's pushing and backing up his jungle. It's where jungle awareness really comes into play. And this is Korean solo queue for you guys. 10 kills, it's like 6 minutes. More skirmishes happening. It doesn't matter if you have scaling or you do and don't have scaling. They don't care. They're going to fight. They're going to do what's good for their champion. Very, very fast-paced games. And if he doesn't have Time Warp Tonic with Doran's and Dark Seal, he's not going to have a big enough mana pool or enough resources to be able to even attend these fights. Because if he uses his abilities on the wave with only one Doran's and then goes straight into it like a Amp Tomb, he's not going to be able to deal with it. Too fast-paced. Doran's is only good in longer extended lanes. Getting that poke down. Really weaving in those auto attacks as much as possible. Thinning the wave a little bit here. Makes it easier for him to catch it onto tower. Not afraid to use a bit of mana on the wave. A lot of pings going on here. So they're 5k down, man. This is insane. And they actually win this game, by the way. Proc their mana flow. His mana flow would be fully stacked by now. Sorry, that was just a Scorch proc. So he doesn't even get a blue buff. They traded blues and Kindred took the blues. So he actually has no blue buff. This is the absolute worst case scenario for Orianna right now. So he gets a ward down on one side. I'm assuming he probably just given up completely on his top side since Renekton is just boned. So he's getting the wave in, knowing that it looks like there might be a Rift Herald contest. He's always considering his jungle's location here. He doesn't have TP, so what's going to happen? Okay. Insta-base. So maybe he was just shoving there to reset, not for the Rift Herald. That probably would have made more sense, because he actually had lost chapter gold. That makes a lot of sense. So he's actually swapped to cleanse this game, by the way. I didn't really mention that, but pretty self-explanatory versus Galio. He's pinging missing. Ideally, a play does not happen right now, but it's Korean solo queue, so they probably won't listen anyway. They will still make a play. Oh, man. Oh, man. So he's just getting the wave out. Not really much he can do at this point. He just needs to try and push the pace. Keep making Galio react to waves mid. Prevent, like, walk that tightrope. He needs to keep pushing, pressure this Galio as much as he can to minimize the amount of opportunities Galio can actually get to. But now he's got Lost Chapter, it's not too bad, and he CS'd relatively well. Note, even though he's died and been forced to play the lane quite fast, he's still taken solid bases because he's always either based on a cannon wave, or he's hard push when Galio was reset, or he TP'd instantly in the early game. Like, he's never really missed unnecessary CS. So his CS is quite good. Still weaving in those auto attacks, poking as much as he can here. Now, this is the sort of fight Orianna wants. Front to back, great access, boom. Boom, shutdown. That's all Orianna needs. One shutdown, double boss, 1,300 gold. Actually up on gold onto Galio now, and the Rift Herald. This is exactly what... And this is what he does. It's so... the amount of VODs that I watch where this sort of thing happens... It's slow, or like he's just chilling if his team's ahead or behind, this sort of thing. And then randomly, this one like skirmish breaks out where he plays it flawlessly. Last game it was around this team fight here. This game it was around the Rift Herald, because he knows what positioning he needs to, how his positioning needs to be for his champion. He never puts himself in like weird positions. Uses the Rift Herald here, probably to just get enough plates here to get enough gold for his Ludens, I'm assuming. I'm assuming he just bases here. He's got a lot of gold here. He's forced to cleanse. Okay. So as you can see, pretty fast-paced game. Fast forward, he's got doubles, so he's probably staying in the lane a little bit longer, knowing he has full control over this Galio. Nothing too special going on here, pretty stock standard gameplay. Just fast forwarding a bit, because I want to kind of get to the mid game. Stock standard gameplay. Oh. To be honest, I'm surprised he didn't ult there. But maybe he knew that Galio had ult. Just really, I guess, really trying to push the pace of this lane, given that he has doubles and, you know, he can really abuse this Galio. And his team's kind of just playing around him, so... Even greed's longer. So he has TP, so he probably thinks that I can just TP back anyway. This dragon's coming up, so I don't know what they're planning to do. Unless they're planning to trade it. Don't know. So he gets his Ludens, upgrades to Mercs, gets a very CC heavy team. They got Ashe and Volley and Galio. Wonder what he swaps his TP to. Heal. He swaps it to heal, which makes a lot of sense. Again, because he's not versing any Ignites, or in mid lane anyway. Looks like they're just trading off the dragon, so he's just going to be leaning on the top side here. Get solely this blue buff. Beautiful. Pretty stock standard stuff there. Trading sides of the map, where they get one objective, they get the other. They made a play onto the Jace, whereas they get the dragon. Uses this bit of a lull state here with his blue off to take away the Raptors. Stock standard. Beautiful. Now you'll start to see the lane assignments switch up a little bit. Now, this is where things get interesting. This is when I get a lot of questions in the Discord where it's like, oh, what do I do now? The AD carry supports grouping mid. I can't really side lane. I'm too scared to side lane. I'm playing a control mage or something. Like, what do I do? Now, it's actually funny. High elo Korean Challenger is actually similar to like gold. Gold in like NA or like gold in EU or gold in OS. In the sense that everyone just groups and fights. Side laning, it sounds really weird saying this, but like no one side lanes because unless they're playing like a hardcore splitting champion, right? In terms of mid laners though, like you get a lot of value from grouping because people put an emphasis on just fighting. You can't afford to just sit in the side lane for an extended period of time. So now we're heading into mid game here. He's AD carry and supported grouped mid. He's happy to just share a bit of XP here with his AD carry just to secure this mid tower because he knows how important mid tier 1 is. And no, this is where things get spicy. He's staying here for a little bit. He doesn't want to go to the side lane. And he knows his team's around the area. He's actually losing a lot of farm in the side lane right now. Now, he eventually goes to the side lane, right? You'll see it here. Where is it? Well, he gets one mid wave here knowing that his AD carry had to recall. Then he bases. He gets his needlessly large rod. I think this game he was actually going for a Spellbinder. I'm not 100% sure. Now he goes to the side lane. Now look at this. He knows the next objective is Rift Herald. So he doesn't want to stay here for long. He gets this one little wave and straight away groups. Look at that. He knows he needs to be at this fight way earlier before it spawns. He can't even get the next wave. He knows, okay, this is going to be it's a very fast-paced game. Both teams have a lot of engage. The team's posturing aggressively. He needs to be here. He only got that one wave. He didn't get the next wave. He's just chilling. And he groups. And he knows. He has to defend this tier 1. And he knows he needs to be here for the river control for this Rift Herald fight. And he probably also saw that his bot lane were kind of getting screwed mid. And then if they lost mid tier 1, the pace of the game would get played so fast. It might actually make it really hard for him. So, grouping here, trading kills. If he hadn't got here when he did, none of this would have happened. This would have been a way worse outcome. And yes, he is losing farm in the side lane. But this is what I always say to my coaching clients and people in my Discord. As long as you farm well for the first 15 minutes of the game before it gets chaotic or too chaotic and before side laning becomes a thing, that's fine. You're going to be strong enough to navigate the mid to late game anyway, because then when it comes to these mid game team fights, you're going to have the resources to win them, which is what really matters. It's those 15-minute team fights that really matter. So he's trying to protect himself here. He doesn't want to die. Trying to peel, but not overextend himself. He's trying to block the Jace EQ here. That's why he's trying to stand there. But he's really trying to make sure this tower doesn't die as well. Beautiful. Just notice, fights. Everyone's fighting around this area. This is just the way high elo Korean challenges all you goes. And no, this is where I'm not just... Again, in my slide, I said, we're not here to copy Dopa, okay? I'm just telling you what he does in order to navigate and win games reliably with Orianna. You have to be very aware or very conscious of what happens in your specific elo on your specific server. If you're playing in Silver and NA, it's going to be different to the way you play Gold in EU, or the way you play Diamond in OS, or the way you play, Bronze in Korea. Every rank, every server... It's just different tendencies, different habits, people play differently. So your job is to adapt. Adaptation. You got to be a chameleon. You got to adapt to your environment. He knows this game pace is getting played very, very fast. He knows, given what's happened so far in this game, he needs to be there for the fights. He can't afford to be late. His champion's a front-to-back team fight. He needs to be there from the start. He's going a very burst-oriented build. He's going Ludens. Neither is Large Rod. He's not going Archangel. He's not going Leandre. He's not going a sustained build. He doesn't have phase rush. He's playing for burst. He's playing for that early strength. And he's willing to be a little bit inefficient for the sake of being there for this team. So we just int here a little bit. Fast forwarding again. Dragon's coming up. Rift Herald's coming up. So he actually just groups here. Gets the blue buff. Notice again, not going to a side lane. No side laning. Then he waits, I believe. What does he do here? Still grouping. He knows there's no reason for him to side lane. He can't go bot. Renekton needs to be top anyway. Right now. Actually, to be honest, Renekton should be bot. Maybe they thought they were going to contest Infernal. I don't know. So Renekton's basing, swapping those lane assignments again. Now he goes to the side lane temporarily for a bit because he actually has hover. He has hover from his Kindred. Goes for he changes to Ghost. Goes for an all-in. He's just always with his team. He's just always, honestly, it's just crazy. And when I watched this, I was fascinated. I was like, this is just not what I would do. In this game, I would have told my Renekton to go bot way earlier. I would have just been in the side lane, then I would have pushed and grouped with my team. I wouldn't have just grouped and gone mid to top here and just like gone for a kill in this Galio. That's just like, these sorts of things are just not the decisions I would make. But he's so aware of the level of engage. He's so aware of the tendencies of his team so far. Rakan engage. His Kindred's quite strong, playing quite aggressively. They're looking for things. So he's actually got an Oblivion Orb here as well. So he goes for a base here. What does he get? Turns that into a Morello's. So he catches one side wave, catches another side wave, then he groups. Doesn't go any further. Gets wet wolves. Comes back mid, knowing that this is where the action's going to be. He'll catch sideways if need be, but he won't stay there for an extended period of time. And notice how there's this wave's coming in, but he knows everyone's grouping mid. I'm not going to... I can't afford to go to the side lane. Fight, 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 fight. And this is beautiful. Front to back team fight's exactly what Orianna wants. He's never coming in from the side. He's never getting caught in transition. He's never not here when a fight... Notice, every single big team fight this game, he's been there. And then they get the fight. Here comes the 20-minute Baron, 22-minute Baron, and then they get Baron, and the game pretty much ends out pretty easily. And note again, you're playing Orianna, so these sorts of fights are good. He's trying to position on the back end of the pit as well, so he's not going to act as the front line. Nothing special. Beautiful. Baron. So, and there's pretty much rinse repeat. Same thing. Catch side wave group. Catch side wave group. So, what we'll do now is I'm going to take you through a slide talking about the main key takeaways from these two VODs of Dopa. Hopefully we can kind of distill this into some neat takeaways. Even some things not to do as well. So stay tuned, guys. So given there was a lot of information in this video, guys, let's quickly break down the key positive takeaways and the key negative takeaways from this video. Now, the biggest positive, in my opinion, of Dopa's gameplay, and something that I always strive to take away from when I watch his videos, is how great he is at adapting to a specific game pace or a specific matchup through changing his runes, his itemization, and just overall trading patterns. So one thing that you probably saw is that, you know, maybe this whole early Darkseal Doran's setup with, you know, heavy trading with Scorch and going back for early TPs, that sort of thing, maybe that might not work for you. But it's the mindset behind it which makes it genius. He's always able to find a creative way to make a champion work in an elo, because he's actually not good at a lot of champions. He's only good or really good at like Orianna, Twisted Fate, Kassadin, and Fizz. So he has to make the most of his champion pool. So this is what you need to do with your champion pool. And this is where champion mastery really comes into play, rather than just saying, oh, I can never play Victor at this elo. You should be thinking, okay, and I've been guilty of this, guys, as well, is, okay, how can I adapt my runes? How can I adapt my itemization or my trading patterns to figure out a way to be the most impactful in this game? The next one, or one of the most, I guess, biggest or most impressive qualities of Dopa, is his just wave management is near perfect. Basically, in every single situation, he knows where the wave is going to be and where he needs it in order to be effective with his champion. He never unnecessarily hits the wave if he doesn't need to. He knows if he needs to freeze, if he needs to push, and it's always tied to, does he need to recall? Does he need to be at a certain fight? So he's which actually ties into this next point, which is he's very, very aware of his jungle's location, which is a great learning objective for you guys. It's actually a learning objective that I've had for quite a while. And if you're aware of your jungle's location, it allows you to make much better quality decisions, because then you know, all right, If my jungler's invading here, then I actually probably should shove this wave, hover there, so just in case a fight breaks out, then I might be able to be there before the enemy mid laner, or, you know, my jungler's actually just ganked and now needs to full clear, so I don't need to hit this wave. I actually ideally want to keep it frozen, be quite safe, and wait for my jungle to get back onto the map where I can actually play a little bit more aggressive. Another thing that I love about Dopa is that he has beautiful assessment of the tendencies within the game to assess the overall game pace. He understands that, okay, it's okay to be inefficient with this wave because I know that a fight most likely will break out given that's what's happened in the past, given the amount of engagement on our team, given this objective and how much people value this objective at this specific elo. So he's very good at identifying tendencies with whatever server he's in, with whatever elo. That's why he was so good at boosting back in the day, because he just understood what needed to happen in order to win a game and really assess the tendencies of the people in that game. And that really just comes with game experience and time. The next one's efficient use of TP. So it's very rare that I watch a Dopa VOD where I look at a TP and I'm like, I don't know if he got much value from that. Like, whenever I see him use TP, it always makes sense. He's not just thinking very linearly. He's not thinking one-dimensionally. He's thinking, okay, if I TP here, it's not only going to maximize the amount of XP and gold I have, it's also going to do something else, whether it's allow me to get river control for this specific objective, or isolate the lane to prevent the enemy from roaming, or get vision down, which will allow me to lean and get pressure on this wave when I wouldn't have otherwise. It's always a next level TP that achieves multiple things at once. The next one here is he is always at fights as they break out. And this is a skill that I am yet to develop, and I need to learn from Dopa in order to develop this skill, because there are so many times in my own solo queue games where a fight breaks out and I'm just not there. It's because I'm not thinking about the tendencies in that game. I'm not thinking hard enough about the game pace. I'm not thinking far enough ahead about my jungle's location or how my team's posturing or what the next objective is. He's willing to give CS just so he can be there for that fight, because he knows these fights are what dictates or largely dictate that game being a win or a loss. So he's very, very good at it. And also that ties directly into Orianna's identity, where she needs to be at the fight first to control the choke points, to utilize her range advantage and play those front-to-back burst-oriented fights. Now for the negatives, guys. One thing about Dopa you got to be a little bit careful of is that he is sometimes very inefficient in mid-game, because this ties directly into the elos he's within. So you just got to be careful. You don't always want to just be randomly grouping unless you know it's very likely that a fight is going to break out. So he is quite inefficient in mid to late game anyway. So just keep in mind that you've got to be careful, be cognizant of the elo you're within, which ties into my next point, is that his itemization is also very risky and can easily backfire, because if you're playing Orianna and you're defaulting to, say, a Doran's and a Darkseal and just blindly copying Orianna's build, and you're not really pushing the pace of the game, or it's not for a specific reason, then you might as well just played it slow and played for Lost Chapter and not done this, because, again, you're delaying your Lost Chapter, you're delaying your Luden significantly by, to be more specific, between a Doran's and a Darkseal, 750 gold. And you could have even maybe just started with a Doran's and had more mana regen over a longer extended laning phase, rather than starting Corrupting Pot and going Time Warp Tonic, when you may not even be taking heavy trade, so there's no real point of taking Time Warp Tonic. So this is where you really got to understand why and how the runes work and how the itemization actually functions within a game. And like I said, it's not for the average player. It's very specific for his elo. And I'm trying to, or my point was with this video, was to really get into the mindset of what I think Dopa was trying to achieve with these specific decisions within his itemization, within his runes, within his trading patterns, so that you guys can potentially like go over the same thought process within your specific elos. So that's it for today, guys. Hopefully there's at least one or two things you can take away from Dopa. I love watching Dopa. Very, very interesting player. Please don't follow things blindly. Make sure you understand what's at play here. And appreciate all the support, guys. Cheers.